Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, the $1 Million Show. Today is beautiful Thursday, June 30th, 2016. And I just want everyone to know we thank you for listening to the $1 Million program worldwide on Charlton and Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I want to thank again all of our listeners from Latin America. So bienvenidos. I'm actually starting to learn more Spanish, Big C, Paquito, and also London, England, and Berlin, Germany, and Canada. I was surprised that we got people coming from Australia on the south end of the planet, also the great continent of Africa. So everyone, thank you again, Charlton and Big C Sports. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And Big C, as you know, number one, you call in from the East Coast all the time, and I want to tell you out here in California, it's about 100 degrees. I actually saw people walking around with umbrellas, Big C, in the summertime, not because it's raining, but because it's so hot, Big C. You guys always live in the heat. How do you put up with it, Big C, back on the East Coast?
Well, first of all, hola, ¿cómo está, mijo?
Paquito.
Paquito.
We're trying.
Muy bien.
Okay.
We're working on it.
Uno, dos, tres. We're learning. So we got to learn it fast before Donald Trump does that wall, Big C. You better pick up your English and your Spanish, okay?
Well, you know, if Donald Trump wants to build a wall, we know how. He'll get halfway through it and file for bankruptcy. So.
Yeah. Or he'll get someone else to do it. He has to really...
Well, I don't have no more money to pay the bills, so I'm not going to pay the part that's been built already, so I'm going to file bankruptcy. Meet me in court.
Well, just like in Doral, he had a lot of his employees down there. They actually happen to come from Latin America, and of course, he likes to lump everybody into the same pot. Like, for example, you know, any person that happens to be of a Latin background, they get stereotyped also, whether they're athletes or not. We know that even down in the Carolinas and also in Cuba and South America, even NBA and NFL teams, especially baseball teams, are going down there to exploit these young boys with these baseball farms. So they can come in here and play your sports, but when they come here looking for work, they have to go through 19,000 checkpoints, Big C. Your thoughts on that? They'll go down and get a high school kid because he can hit a baseball 400 feet. But you try to come in looking for a job, you have to go through 19,000 background checks, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, we talked about that yesterday, Charlton, when we talked to Mark Sanchez, the quarterback of the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
Who's now on his third franchise since being the number 6 overall pick several years ago by the New York Jets and taking them to back-to-back AFC championship games, Charlton. We talked about the money that he received from Denver in signing a contract extension versus the money that Andrew Luck has just gotten, Charlton. $144 million.
Yeah.
6-year contract extension. You know, unbelievable money. Good congratulations to Andrew Luck on being able to race the Indianapolis coast like that. But, you know, when you look at the success or minimal success he's had in the NFL, Charlton, there's a half dozen other young quarterbacks who've had equal, if not more, success in their same time in the NFL. And it's almost like the Brock Osweiler scenario, Charlton, that we look at. You play 5 games for the Denver Broncos and you go out and get a $75 million contract. There's been African-American quarterbacks over the past decade in the NFL that has gone out and equaled Brock Osweiler's feat, but yet they can't get a contract or they can't even find a team, Charlton.
Well, speaking of finding a team, this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealer, home of the all-new Escalade, the standard of the world. And you can go down and get it there brand new, only at your NorCal dealers, and tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, this is so interesting because sometime when I was a young boy, I was taught, hey, don't question authority, predominantly because the authority happened to be mainstream Caucasian. But I was always taught that if you know the answer, be willing to speak your mind. And I know a lot of you good old boys down south, you grew up in Jim Crow, and so they had these colored drinking fountains and colored and white restrooms and all that jazz. Well, just because it goes away in the law, it doesn't mean that it goes away in the heart, Big C. And how does that matter to what I'm saying here? We know that the White House was even built by African Americans. It was designed by an African American man, the most powerful house in the world. Now think about this. When we talk about the salary, and I listen to some of the sports leaders, radio stations here in Northern California, and all they talk about is how big and fast someone is. In fact, when they talk about Durant being the free agent coming up and maybe going to get more money than anyone. All they talk about is he's big and fast, can score 30 points a game. He's good on the fast break. He can shoot the three-point basket. He's also pretty decent on defense. Nothing about his intelligence. Nothing about what type of foundations he supports. Nothing about his economic prowess, Big C. I just think that is so disenchanting because they keep telling every young black kid that if you shoot enough basketballs, you can be like Kevin Durant, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, it's always pigeonholed the black athlete that he can only play, he cannot think. And when you look at the superstars of all the major sports, except for hockey, they're African-American, Charlton, whether it's baseball, basketball, or football. They are the perennial leaders in these sports, and they're leaders for a reason, Charlton, not just their athleticism, but their intelligence, their ability to take control. We just saw the NBA Finals, where Coach LeBron James, led the Cleveland Cavaliers to the NBA championship.
His point guard was Adam Silver right here, too. His point guard was Adam Silver, Big C.
So not only is he one of the top greatest players in the NBA right now, but he's also one of the best head coaches in the NBA. So no one since Bill Russell has carried that dual role and won a championship.
Yeah.
And LeBron James has emulated Bill Russell as far as his leadership in the NBA. But no one gives the African-American athlete the praise for the knowledge that they possess.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about the African-American catchers in Major League Baseball, I'm thinking Yadier Molina with St. Louis, who has won a couple of World Series calling and commanding the pitchers with the St. Louis Cardinals. And when you look around the league, it's always been that way, Charlton. Wherever you've had an African-American catcher, I remember years ago with the Pittsburgh Pirates, Manny Sanguilla, one of the greatest athletes to ever play behind the plate. Lifetime 300 hitter, won a couple championships with the Pittsburgh Pirates back in the 70s, Charlton. And, never got the praise for it. They always say, well, he has great athleticism. But when you're calling the game as a catcher, that means you're controlling the pitcher. You're controlling the infield. So you have to have some cerebralness about you. And then these are the things that these athletes are not getting praised for. We've talked about the number of African-American quarterbacks that have started in the NFL and have gone on to Super Bowl success. That percentage of white quarterbacks don't exist.
Well, see, Big C, I think I'm so proud of what Jim Brown did because Harry Evers has always been an advocate. Now, I think discrimination is bad no matter who you are, whether you're discriminating against women or African Americans or Latinos or even Caucasians. But the whole world, and Dr. Martin Luther King talked about this, and a lot of times people say, hey, we marched and we took down some of these colored bathrooms and colored drinking fountains things. But the one thing that was never taken down was the income gap, because the disparity for African Americans and all the other people of color and women, the income gap is what determines what type of lifestyle you have. Not if I can drink from the same water fountain or in your case, Big C, the water hose. I don't care if I drink from Big C's water hose. I just want to be able to drink from whatever hose I want to, no matter what color you are. But think about what I'm going to say here, because it crosses the line in all sports. When we look at Andrew Luck, and this is capitalism. When you can get some money, get the money. But Jim Brown put the onus on the black athlete, reaching back to the black community, helping young black kids. Andrew Luck can reach back and help a lot of young kids that are poor, black and white, but I doubt if he has the same consciousness that Jim Brown has or Harry Edwards. But think about the team that gave this guy $140 million, or the Indianapolis Colts going throughout the inner cities of Indianapolis, Indiana, making sure that these programs that Jim Brown talked about are put together, or are they just trying to get the next young black kid to come to their program out of college, Big C? But they could fund organizations in neighborhoods of color and even poor white neighborhoods if they wanted to. Why isn't the onus put on them by Jim Brown, Big C?
Well, that's something that is given a pass to owners in these leagues, Charlton, and I don't understand why, because they go to these communities, they go to these states and cities, they demand that you build them a stadium on taxpayers' money. That money that could have went into the education system, but they say the economic return back to the city is greater than what it is putting it in education, which I have a hard time believing, because if you don't educate these people, how are they going to get a job to be able to afford a seat in those stadiums, Charlton? We know corporate America can. But can these young men who don't have a quality education get a job that they can afford to take their families to watch these games on the weekend? These are the oversights that people are not looking at, Charlton. Maybe they've seen them and don't want to acknowledge them. I believe that would be more fair to say. Because when we look at an Andrew Luck, the kind of money, and $88 million of that money is guaranteed.
Yeah.
$88 million. He may not see the 144, but he's going to see 88.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money. But who is the key to Andrew Luck's success, Charlton, as a quarterback in the NFL? It's going to be African-American receivers and African-American running backs.
Yeah.
You show me an NFL team that lines up all white wide receivers and all white running backs, and I'll show you an NFL team not making the playoffs. Charlton.
Now, I'm going to say something that's almost flippant, but I think in my cynical mind, it makes sense. I was talking to one of my Caucasian friends about race, and we talked about the book Tim Wise that talked about white skin privilege. And a lot of white people won't talk about it because they benefit from it, so why would they open up the what they call the Pandora's box? But we were just playing a game of pool, and we were just being flippant, so no one please get offended. He said, Charlton. I said, yeah. He said, what color is the cue ball? How do you win the prize? What color is the last ball you knock into the pool hole to win? I mean, subconsciously, the white ball hits the black ball. Now, a lot of people might say, okay, yeah, that's stretching. We're just having a flippant conversation. But this money thing, Big C, this money thing determines how people live. And when we have the most powerful league in the world, the NFL, and there's always this push about NFL 60 minutes, go out and play for 60 minutes. How about go out and donate computers to 60 kids in every school? The kids of color are kids that are in poor communities because that's where predominantly these athletes come from, Big C. So I'll bring this up. With Roger Goodell, his contract, the commissioner of the NFL, and he surpassed the great Pete Rozelle, in his 10 years, Big C, he's made $212,500,000. He doesn't throw a touchdown pass. He doesn't block. He doesn't run the ball. He doesn't catch anything. However, he's Caucasian. He comes down more stringent on African Americans who commit an illegality, I guess anything illegal in the league, whether there's domestic violence or substance abuse or whatever. And I bring it up because of this. Al Jazeera has a report aimed at the NFL and their use of HGH among many of the athletes. The NFL is investigating that report because they don't want that to come out. However, we just had this CTE issue with brain trauma, and Will Smith did a movie on it. And what did the players all talk about? They knew from Mike Webster for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they had to take some type of substance in order to make it in this league. And oftentimes, the culprit of pushing a substance on an athlete was a team doctor that was sanctioned by the NFL. Big C, your thoughts on that?
Well, we've known that for decades, Charlton, that players took performance enhancement needles, not drugs, needles. They took the direct injections, Charlton. Pittsburgh Steelers were the forerunners of that in the NFL back in the 70s. When you look at the hulking size of their offensive linemen, they were ripped, they were buff, and everybody revered them throughout the league. You know, we looked at them.
Now, Big C, I keep telling you, you can't talk about my size. I don't want people paying attention to me when I'm walking down the street, okay? Go right ahead, Big C.
You knew when you played the Steelers that you were going to have a long day.
Yeah.
You know, just because of their offensive linemen. And the defensive linemen used it also, Charlton. They were not natural. It was known throughout the league, but there was no drug testing in place during that era, Charlton. So players were allowed to use whatever they wanted to use. And we talk about the CTE. The CTE was only part of what happened. You know, they talk about that because that's the most notable outward physical thing that you see.
Yeah.
No one talks about the organ damage that players suffer, Charlton, the liver damage, the kidney damage, the enlarged hearts. These are things that players suffer through, and a lot of players have lost their lives, Charlton, because of that. You know, from the 70s, uncontrollable steroid use that the NFL turned a blind eye to. I mean, you think about players, you know, on kidney dialysis now that played football in the 70s. There's been so many great football players, Charlton, that have had amputations because of the injections of cortisone that they took over the years.
Yeah.
Players developed diabetes, you know, liver cirrhosis of the liver through alcohol and drug inducement.
Yeah.
There's been so much that has not been talked about. So CTE is almost like a mask, Charlton. You can bring it out in the public spotlight because we can say, okay, people have suffered head trauma.
Right.
But it's the organ trauma, Charlton, that these players that have suffered and passed away from and are living in minimal conditions now because of.
You know, I was talking to a gentleman he's a former sports agent here in Northern California, and he was talking about how he does celebrity, you know, signings. He's worked with people like the great Art Shell and Joe Montana and Emmitt Smith and Tim Brown and many other NFL football players. And I tell you this, he said that some guys for the Oakland Raiders had so many knee surgeries that they could barely recognize that they had a knee when they took their brace off the knee. But the thing about the injections is, and I'm not a doctor, and he wasn't either, but some of the injections per the athletes, you can't feel the pain that you're going through. And so when Al Jazeera has a report that everybody knows of, and the NFL is ironically investigating the accuracy of a report that they've already concluded that they've had a lot of issues with performance-enhancing substances in the league, I just think it's something that they're trying to protect themselves. But Goodell, congratulations on the $212 million salary. I wonder how much of that has gone to inner city programs to help build up some of the communities in the black neighborhoods that many of these athletes come out of. I think about 70% of the NFL is African American. And speaking of 70%, this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California BMW dealers, home of the ultimate driving machine. Go down and test drive the super powerful M7 with over 600 horsepower, also known as a 760 Li. And when you're driving it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, one more thing I want to bring up too, because I love the sport game. And I think just like a car company, or if you're a pharmaceutical company, they're always looking for the best drug. You know, we're trying to cure cancer with Vice President Joe Biden making that a mission, and President Obama backing that as well. And I know someday we will cure cancer the same way we had other illnesses that were cured in the last 100 years. But this thing about keeping quiet about what protects athletes, I think that harms athletes. We should let people go pro and con, good and bad, no matter what it is. So when the NFL is investigating a report that they already know is out there, I think that's egregious, Big C. And I would hope that they would start looking at what's in the best interest of the athletes, Big C. But I want to get back on this one more subject, because I want to bring up what Jim Brown talked about. ESPN only had it on for one day when we were honoring the great Muhammad Ali, where he had Harry Edwards and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar there. When I look at owners like Paul Allen, who owns the Seattle Seahawks and also the Portland Trailblazers in basketball, Big C, I look at Arthur Blank that owns the Atlanta Falcons. I believe they're getting a $1.5 billion stadium in Atlanta, which is not that far from the old stadium that was built about 20
right next door. You can reach out and touch them, Charlton.
Right next door, you can reach out and touch somebody, Big C. But be careful who you reach out and touch in the South, Big C. I think they have issues against that when you got moonshine running through your blood. But just one of those things I hear, Big C. But I just asked this question, and you brought it up ahead of time. And here in Sacramento, they're building a $540 million NBA basketball arena for the Sacramento Kings that win about 30 games a year. And Ron Adivie got the taxpayers to put up $250 million of the $540 million. Well, now the organization is valued at almost $1 billion, so they've appreciated. I think that's a good return on your investment when you put in $250 million and now you're worth $1 billion.
Like an ROI like that, Charlton.
Are they going to give some of that money back to the school districts here in Sacramento or other cities in Northern California? Or is he just quiet about that? Why don't they have to pay some of the money back when they're making such a big profit, Big C? Does that make any sense?
You know, Charlton, it really doesn't. And you think about the Atlanta Stadium, where, half funded by the taxpayers' money. I think Arthur Blank was putting in $400 to $500 million. So $1 billion is coming from the state and revenue taxes. And however they want to pull the taxes, through hotels, through transportation, or whatever, gasoline tax. It's still tax money that's there. If it can go to a sporting venue, why can't it go into higher education, Charlton? To improve the learning conditions of the youth of those areas. That's what you have to look at, and it's not there. Sports is so big, Charlton, it's beyond education. It's beyond anything that's in society anymore. You got the Olympics coming up. We've talked about that. You just spoke about Al Jazeera with the drug enhancement. The reason why the NFL is investigating what quarterback had just retired and won a Super Bowl.
They were sending that to his wife, Big C. That wasn't his. That's my wife's stuff. She needs
his wife needs the steroids to improve her sleepness at night.
And I thought that chivalry was dead in the United States, Big C.
So what they're trying to do is protect his legacy. If it comes out that he was on steroids in his last couple of years playing, that really tarnishes what he accomplished throughout his career, especially winning a Super Bowl and walking away. Do you put an asterisk by it, or do you strip the Broncos of the Super Bowl by having an elite player on the field?
Think about this, Big C. What's happened to Barry Bonds when he was accused of doing things that he went through court and was exonerated. Look at what happened to Pete Rose when they said that he bet on baseball. He can't get into the Hall of Fame even though they just honored him.
Mark McGwire's the same way.
Mark McGwire too.
The Cardinals and the A's.
Yeah, so
Canseco will never get any consideration.
And Roger Clemens, same thing. Roger Clemens, when he said he never put a needle in his backside, and then he got in front of Congress.
He may not have, Charlton.
He said somebody else did it.
Chris Carter said that you got to have a strong I didn't have that needle.
Yeah.
Look at the fingerprints on there.
That's so.
The DNA on the needle.
That's so funny. And so when we think about the money that's there, because I love the fact that you brought this to my attention, and it just happened that Jim Brown started talking about it after you were talking about it for about a year. But you guys are good old boys and you're old school, and I say that not lightheartedly, Big C, because it doesn't matter how many big contracts you give to any individual athlete. If we don't find a way to fix the broken school systems, or even give kids academic hope as opposed to just athletic hope, it's always going to stay the same. So I bring this up because with the $212 million that Goodell got, how much is going back to the inner city kids? Not that much, but that's where most of the athletes come from, especially with the NBA, with Silver being the commissioner now. And we talk about this number that's kind of staggering. In 2015, the free agency that's going to start in about 4 hours tonight for the NBA, there was over $1.4 billion generated by giving players more money. Only one team won the championship. Now, the $70 million cap per team is what happened last year. This year, the cap goes up $20 million. It's going to be $90 million. So how much more money would be generated now with free agency? We're talking about maybe $1.5 billion or more, and that's just to pay players to play basketball. How much of that money could go back to helping rebuild inner city schools that are dilapidated, and some are even closing? If you're in the Oakland Unified School District, there's so much of a lack because they need books, they need computers, they need everything that helps you compete. If you're in a better school district, like maybe in Moraga or some parts of Silicon Valley, and I'm sure throughout the country they have the same kind of haves and have-nots, Big C. So with Durant going to the Hamptons to meet the Golden State Warriors about signing, even if there's talk he's going to stay in OKC, why can't they put more emphasis and make it publicly known that they're trying to use that money to rebuild the inner cities where most of these kids come from, Big C?
Well, every professional organization, Charlton, whatever their payroll is, they should be allotted a percentage of that to go back into school systems, Charlton, where it's mandated by the state and the city that they're playing in.
Yeah.
But it's not. Everybody is so awestruck being around professional athletes, Charlton, and you basically sell your soul to be around them.
Yeah.
So when you look at these mayors, you look at these governors, you look at these senators who want to be affiliated with these professional athletes because in their life, that's the greatest thing they can do.
Yeah.
Not the public service that they've been voted into to perform for the citizens, but they all want to be awestruck hanging with these athletes.
Yeah.
And these athletes, it shouldn't be mandated that the athletes should have to go in and support the community. It's nice that they do their charitable events and have their organizations, Charlton.
Yeah.
But these city leaders taking the money out of the city coffers and building these massive arenas, whether it's football, basketball, baseball. Matter of fact, not only are the Atlanta Falcons getting a new stadium in Atlanta, Charlton, the Atlanta Braves are getting a new stadium.
Wow.
That's going to open next year also.
Wow.
So you have they played in Turner Field, which was the 96 home
for the Olympics.
The Olympics.
Yeah.
And so you think about that. That stadium is how old, Charlton?
About
30 years
old?
old?
Not even 30 years old.
Yeah. So 96 to 2016, 20 years, Charlton.
Yeah.
That stadium only existed 20 years, and it's going to come down. So you think about the stadium where you are in Alameda County there, the Coliseum.
Yeah.
That stadium went into play in 1966, Charlton.
Yeah.
So it's 50 years old. So when you want to talk about an antiquated stadium, that's what you look at is in Oakland. It's an antiquated stadium. And the Los Angeles Rams are about to get a new stadium in Los Angeles, Charlton.
$1.7 billion.
1.7, 1.8 billion.
Yeah.
And we've all, the world knows about the struggles in inner city Los Angeles, Compton, East LA, places like that are dilapidated, run down, that the government has left behind.
Yeah.
Think about how much improvement that would have done educationally to put $1.7 billion back into the education system of East LA and Compton, Charlton.
Well, you know what's important? Frederick Douglass helped craft the Emancipation Proclamation, and he could read. A lot of slaves could not read. It was illegal for them to read. And I don't know, going back to slavery, how does that equate today? Because when we go back from college to pros, it's the same thing to me, because pro sports, really the feeder system is free pay college labor. It's really a semi-pro business. But if you don't teach people how to read and write, then they don't know they should challenge anything. Everyone needs access to a lawyer, and if you have access to a lawyer, at least you're going to have a better opportunity to defend yourself. And I want to bring that up, Big C, because when we look at what happens in life, how much money you have determines how you're going to make it. And what we're talking about is not far-fetched. What Harry Evans brought up is not far-fetched. The same with Jim Brown. And the same thing that when we look about, Jim Brown brought this up. UPS has already donated $500 million to the Ali Center. $500 million. You know what can Brown do for you outside of play sports for you, Big C? What can Brown do for you? And that might be a play on words, but the Ali Center, it benefits all kids, not just black kids. All kids, black, white, Native American, it doesn't matter. It helps kids achieve where they don't have the funding. So corporate America could do the same thing if they had a heart to invest in these cities. And what Jim Brown talked about, I want to bring more attention to it, because for these athletes who are going to participate in this $1.5 billion of free agency money for the NBA, most of them are African American. Do what Jim Brown said. Put the onus on your organization to invest in the inner city, to invest in the schools, to invest in math and science, not just the next Nike pair of tennis shoes. So Jim Brown was right, but Big C, I credit you because you brought it up first. And I know you good old boys down south, you're always busy playing Alabama football and practicing, but that's very conscious of you, and we need more conscious thinkers other than just saying the score, the Braves beat the Falcons, whatever score, whoever won what game by what score. That's great. The Raiders going to beat the Chargers, yeah, fantastic. But Jim Brown brought it up after you talked about it first. I hope that ESPN and Fox Sports and all these other major leagues, especially Roger Goodell, that they'll get behind it. Start putting what UPS did. $500 million is not too much to ask, because it's a corporate write-off anyway, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, it took that money and helped out youth. You know, I look at one of the greatest pieces of technology in the world today, and that's the computer. They're always talking about putting computer labs in schools.
Yeah.
But really, do kids read? The computer is there to read. But, you know, when you see advertisements for a computer nowadays on television, all they're talking about is the games that can be played on it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say 90% of the kids who open up a computer are trying to get into a game.
Yeah.
Not into a learning class, but into a game. And so you need to put the blocks up to stop them from going in and having access to games. And that's the number one thing, because all these kids talk about playing Xbox,
yeah,
PlayStation. Those are computers, Charlton. But they're not sitting there doing tutorials on them. They're sitting there playing some war game or some racing game, Charlton, some game of Tron. They need to find out what the educational tool is in these computers. It's great for us to ask for people to put up computer labs for students. But if you don't put in the proper instructors, and that's where all the learning comes from, Charlton, having the proper instructor, because these kids are so intelligent.
Yeah. But
they're not sent in the right direction. They're looking in the wrong direction and opening up the wrong learning tools on the computer and not really getting anything educational out of them, Charlton. There's a lot of people at fault in society that children are not getting an education, and it starts from the top, and it also starts in the home.
I agree with that.
Unless you push that issue as a parent, that you want your child to have an education, they will not achieve an education.
Yeah.
We can also always put the onuses on corporate America, on the athletes, what they need to give back.
Yeah.
But when you're sitting at home with a parent, there was a high school dropout, a junior high dropout, Charlton.
Yeah.
You don't have much of a chance as a child. And unfortunately, America has gone that way too much in the past 40 to 50 years.
Yeah.
After desegregation, education didn't seem to be important. What they fought for so viciously and animately, Charlton, for decades, trying to get equality, is now not what people are striding for, Charlton. They're out there trying to get a quick fix. They're thinking about skirting around an education and saying, hey, I'm wasting my time trying to learn and dropping out and turning into criminal activity.
Yeah.
But it's going to start in the home, not just corporate America, Charlton. We need corporate America as backing. Well, we need the athletes as backing.
Yeah.
But we need the parents to be the forefront advisors to their children, Charlton, in society.
Well, think about this too, Big C. And this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Ford dealer, home of the all-new F-150. They build it Ford tough. And when you're test driving it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, BeneathHisWingsFoundation.org. Make a donation today. It's easy, it's fast, and secure. When it comes to promotions, contact Cynthia Evans at CYNN Entertainment. And when it comes to promotions, she's the best in Northern California. And when you tweet out to her, let her know that Charlton and Big C sent you. You can also make a donation to Charlton and Big C Sports. Big C, I want to bring this up because I was watching some ESPN and some Fox Sports, and they are like sycophants to Andrew Luck, who's never won a Pac-12 championship, and he's never won an NFL championship. And they're saying how Andrew Luck, oh my God, this guy has all the tools of the next great quarterback. He's 3-3 in the playoffs, Big C. But Andrew Luck, when he's getting this $87 or $88 million guaranteed money, you won't hear him say one thing about donating some money to inner city neighborhoods to help rebuild some programs the way Muhammad Ali did. You're not going to hear him talk about helping even poor white neighborhoods, because all inner city neighborhoods are not just African American. You're not going to hear the owner of the Indianapolis Colts saying how they're going to contribute $500 million to inner city schools so that they have a better chance at an education, Big C. You're not going to hear that at all, Big C. And I would hope that they would have the character to do that, but they won't, Big C. So just keep that in mind. If they do hear about it, it's only because they heard it here first. Now,
well, Charlton, what you're going to hear about Andrew Luck is about Andrew Luck's quarterback camp, okay?
Yeah.
And when he's throwing a quarterback camp,
football.
Only the elitists.
Yeah.
The elitists that can afford to go to
You got to pay for it. Yeah, you got to pay for those camps.
He's not going to walk out there and find every young African-American or Hispanic gunslinger that play quarterback on the high school level and, hey, come on to my camp. I'll fly you in.
Yeah.
I'll pay for your room and board and all of that. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
But if you can afford to come and you can pay the tuition fee to come there, you're more than welcome. So you're going to get a couple hundred elite Anglo quarterbacks from around the country that comes in to, an Andrew Luck quarterback camp.
Yeah.
But how does a quarterback camp benefit? Because, Charlton, when we look on the college level, 50% of the starting quarterbacks on college football are African Americans.
Yeah.
And they don't go to these camps, Charlton. They go in there on pure talent to these universities, make them successful, and they give them a pat on the back and a sweatsuit.
Yeah, and I used to work at the Reebok Combine over in the Bay Area when they would have the top athletes from the West Coast. I'm talking about from Oregon, Washington, of course, California, Arizona, Idaho, even some kids from Utah came out here. In fact, that was run by Cal High Sports, and their second combine was held at St. Mary's College, and Tom Brady was a quarterback that was invited to that camp. He played at Sarah High School in San Mateo, so I know what it's like. But Sarah's a private school, and a lot of those kids that come out, they are Anglo because their parents pejoratively may have the money to do that. So I just think this, when we have these issues, Jim Brown talked about it, but I hope that it doesn't go away after one day. And if it's up to me, I won't let it go away after one day, because I want to see people pour back into the neighborhoods. Don't just go there and take all the resources out like a locust. Go back and replant some of the seeds of education and thought and higher learning into these communities. And I want to say this last segment is sponsored by United Labor, guaranteed $100,000 life insurance with no medical questions. Also, Goosehead Property and Casualty, the leaders in property and casualty expense. Also, as a broker with One Life America Life Insurance Company, the leaders in final expense. You can tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports. And they're also looking for agencies and unions to join so that they can get insurance too. And tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports for that. Big C in the final segment of the program. Coastal Carolina, congratulations. They won the College World Series. They're from the Big South Conference. They actually beat Arizona from the Pac-12. There was a kind of a controversial call where Arizona had actually scored and they were tagged out. It was shown again on your favorite thing, the replay, Big C. But even though on the replay showed that the guy had scored, they didn't go back and give him the points. So just your thoughts on College World Series. Also, Mike Phelps going into the Olympics. He already has 22 medals. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, when you think about the College World Series, Charlton, it's the coming together doesn't make the difference what size school you come. Coastal Carolina, a small university, playing against these elite schools from across the country, Charlton. But in baseball, it's almost like an individual sport because it's always one-on-one, the pitcher versus the batter.
Yeah.
And it's about getting hot at the right time. And we've seen over the decades many teams come into, there used to be Roseland Stadium in Omaha, now they have the new facility. But, it's a great time, it's a great atmosphere. And to have that happen, to have a small school come out there, and we've talked about these mega universities, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
Doling out some money to the athletes in their programs.
Right.
And here's Coastal Carolina, never been on TV until the College World Series, Charlton.
Yeah.
But they come in and they knock off all the people that were supposed to win the tournament, Charlton.
Exactly.
And congratulations to them. And that's what college sports is about. It's about equality, and on any given day, anybody should be able to win.
Yeah.
And when you talk about Mike Phelps going to his 5th Olympics, Charlton. He went to his first Olympics 17 years ago.
Yeah.
He's won 22 medals in competing in the Olympics, Charlton. And he has, I believe he has 17 gold medals in his competition.
Amazing.
And that's an amazing feat. He has twice as many overall medals, Charlton, as any athlete in history. And he's favored to win at least 2 more gold medals in the Rio Olympics. And you think about the accomplishment of a Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
Here's a young man who grew up with ADHD, Charlton.
Yeah.
This is what people, when you give the proper medical treatment,
Yeah.
the proper social treatment to people in America that are afflicted. When you talked about Vice President Joe Biden's fight against cancer, lost his son, Bo, last year to that horrible disease, and so many Americans have lost family members and people around the world to that. It's something that America and the world really needs to put emphasis on, is cancer prevention and saving lives in that. But back to Michael Phelps, it shows what the proper treatment can do to help an individual who has a birth infliction. It's not something that somebody wants to deal with. I have a son who has ADHD. But it's something as a parent that you strive to live with. Yeah. And you make the best of a situation. And Michael Phelps exemplifies how an American can be a success when you have the proper tutelage, love and care, and medical advice to get you over an infliction, Charlton.
Well, Big C, I appreciate that very much. And I know that everybody who wants to contribute to something, the NFL can do it. You have the money. I mean, we talk about how much money an individual is going to make. The NFL does it. The NBA does it. Major League Baseball does it. But Muhammad Ali, he backed it up by what he did. So Andrew Luck and the guys who own these NFL football teams, do what Muhammad Ali did. Do what UPS did. Give some money back to these inner city schools. Try to build up these organizations in these cities and these schools the way Muhammad Ali did with the Ali Center. You have the money to do it, Roger Goodell, but do you have the heart? And speaking of the heart, every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide, you can follow Charlton and Big C Sports. We keep it real. We also want to tell you that we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.